Hi there, welcome. We're in my kitchen again, where I share with you some of my favorite recipes or those most requested by friends and family. Today I'm going to share with you an old family recipe that comes from my husband's Greek grandmother. It's called Spanakopita, and it's a savory spinach pie. And if you watched my baklava video, you're familiar with the technique of layering phyllo dough with butter and getting that nice crispy top and bottom. But if you're not, I'm going to go over again what you do with phyllo dough and what it is. So this is found in the grocery store in the freezer section. It is a very thin dough that is rolled up into multiple layers and packaged like this. And you keep it packaged until you're going to use it. I buy it at the store. I store it in my freezer. The day before I'm going to use it, I put it in my refrigerator and let it thaw slowly overnight. And then about an hour or two before I'm going to use it, I set it on my kitchen counter and let it come to room temperature. And that's what I have done. Now, I like this size package. It's about 12 inches long, but this same company, and there are multiple companies that sell it, but this same company, you might find it like 15 or 18 inches long. If that's all you can find, you just simply trim it to the size of your pan. But this one you don't have to trim, and this is what I like about it so much. Now, you need a big bowl because we're going to be doing some mixing, like a bowl that you would put a large salad in. And fortunately, we can now buy spinach in a bucket, a 1-pound bucket. This is baby spinach, organic. I prefer organic when I'm using produce. But years ago when I was making Spanakopita, I had to buy spinach in bunches. And if that's all you have access to, it's fine. It's just more work. You'll need 2 to 3 bunches depending on the size of the actual spinach bunch. But you need to wash it and dry it thoroughly. Spinach has a tendency, when you buy it that way, to have some dirt and sand in it, and you don't want grit in your Spanakopita. So I like to buy it like this now. It is super easy, and I don't have to worry about washing it and drying it. And drying it is really important because if you have too much moisture in your Spanakopita, then your filling is a little watery, and that's not good. So the first thing we're going to do is take our spinach and put it in our big bowl. Now I'll be honest with you, when I'm in a hurry or a little bit lazy, I just dump it all in there. If your baby spinach looks like this and it's small, there's not a problem doing that. You might want to remove extra long stems, but this isn't a problem at all. But just to make it a little easier to handle, I will grab a bunch and just chop through it a little bit. You know, it's not imperative that you do that, but it may make the whole process a little easier for you. So just grab a bunch of spinach and watch your fingers and just chop it a little bit. Now, if you're using spinach that you buy in the produce department and it's not baby spinach, you definitely have to chop those leaves. And what you're going to do is wash them, dry them, then layer them on top of each other, trim off the extra stems, the extra long length, and then just finely shred that spinach. Grandma always told me to just shred it really fine, but I found over the years that just chopping it this way works pretty well. But if you've got big spinach leaves, you've got to take a little more care in how you do that because you don't want big, large pieces in your pie. And there's some stems in here. I'm not worrying too much. If the stems are 2 or 3 inches long, it's not a big deal. And like I said, I've dumped this whole thing in there and just worked with it that way. But mixing it's a little more tedious. And so it doesn't take very long to chop this. Okay, I've got my spinach all chopped and it's in my bowl. The next thing we've got are green onions. And it takes 1.5 bunches of green onions, or 11 or 12 if you don't buy them that way. And we want to chop them quite fine. I cut them in half and line them all up. And I will tell you, when you get your green onions and you're prepping this recipe, trim off the little rooty bottoms, trim off the top, wash them really well, and be sure to run the water down the tops of the onions and then turn them upside down to drain, because sand does accumulate in there, and we don't want, again, we don't want any sand in our Spanakopita. So now I'm just going to slice these. And if I don't get them as thin as I like, which takes a little more time, I'm just going to go back and chop over the whole pile when I'm done. Okay, they're all chopped, and I'm just going to go over it a little bit because these are not all as thin as I'd like them to be. This seems like a lot of onions, I know, but it's not too much for this recipe. It's just perfect. Like I said, 1.5 bunches or 11 or 12 stalks of green onion. Okay, that's good. Now we're just going to scoop that up, put it on top. Okay. The next thing we're going to add is some spice. And the two savory spices in this recipe are dill and mint, and both can be dried. It's fine to use dried. And we're going to use a teaspoon of mint. I'm going to dry my hands, otherwise the mint is really going to stick to the palm of my hand. A teaspoon of mint leaves, and just smash them up like that. Kind of releases the flavor within the leaves. And then the dill is, we don't need to smash that in our hand, it's quite fine already. 2 teaspoons of dill, and kind of toss it over the top rather than dumping it in one spot, because we need to mix all of this up. Okay, now feta cheese. Be sure when you're making Spanakopita that you use authentic Greek feta. You know whether it's authentic or not by what it says on the package. It should say made with 100% sheep's milk, as this one does. I got this at Costco. I use a lot of feta. I put it in salads. I make Greek salad all the time, Spanakopita. And so anyway, I buy big portions. But I found this at Sprouts, and this is organic Greek feta. It doesn't have to be organic, but I shop organic mostly all the time. So for me, that's important. If it's not for you, it's fine. It does not have to be organic. But this is sheep and goat's milk feta, and that's fine too. They will add a little bit of goat's milk to feta when they're making it, just to give it a little more of a kick, spiciness. But it's not spicy in a hot kind of way. It just gives it a little different flavor. So either is fine. If you pick up feta at the store and it says cow's milk, put it back and look for goat's milk or sheep's milk or sheep and goat. So I have a little bit left in here. This comes in a brine, by the way. So when you open it up, you're going to have this yellowy, briny looking solution. And just leave that in there until you use the last of your feta. But I dry it off. And you're going to need for this recipe about 8 ounces, 8 to 12 I use. If you really like the flavor of feta, use the larger amount. I prefer more. So just crumble it. Crumble it right on top of our spinach and our spices and our onions. Now, I'm going to open up this other package because, like I said, I like a little more feta in my Spanakopita. And then when you store it back in the fridge, just wrap it up well. Now this isn't in a brine, but there is moisture in the package, but you can just put it in some plastic. So I'm going to take about half of this and crumble it. And might even smell just a wee bit different because this is goat and sheep and the other one was just sheep's milk. There. And the crumbles don't have to be terribly small either. They can be, you know, like that or smaller. Okay. So, spinach, green onions, spices, feta cheese, crumbled. Now we're going to add 4 eggs. And you're going to need to beat those eggs just a little bit. So crack them in a separate bowl. And lightly beat. I mean, we're not making these frothy or anything. Just take your fork, hold it over your big bowl, and get the yolks and whites mixed up. And now we're just going to pour this over everything. There we go. Now, this next step you can do one of 2 ways. You can get your hands in there and mix, or you can take 2 big spoons. But this is why you need a big bowl, because we've got to mix this up so that the egg is coating everything. And it's going to take a couple minutes. And you might want to bring it to the center of the counter because I end up always flinging some of these ingredients over the side of the bowl rather than hit the floor if it just hits the counter. That way you can put it back in if you need to. Okay, this is well mixed. And my egg is coating everything because everything looks just a little bit shiny. So I'm just going to leave this in there and set it aside. And we are going to open up our phyllo. This one, the way this comes is in 2. So we're going to just open 1 package. It's probably all we'll need. If you're not familiar with working with phyllo dough, you're going to want to get a damp paper towel, barely damp, or a dish towel and cover it in between. I work quickly so it doesn't dry out, but phyllo dries out very quickly and it'll crack on you and it'll be a mess. So if you're not working quickly or you have to walk away from this to tend to something else, cover it up with a very damp towel. Okay, so you unroll it. Now this is split right down the middle, and I'm going to show you that this is not satisfactory. It's rare that it happens like this, but it happens. So I'll tell you, I always buy an extra package of phyllo when I'm going to work with it. Now this can be used. I'm just going to put it back in my freezer and I can make some kind of pastry or something with it. But let's hope this one's better. If it's not, I have one in the refrigerator as a backup because I certainly didn't want to be stuck doing this video with crummy phyllo dough. But let's see. Say a little prayer. Yep, it's cracked too. Okay. I am going to fold that up for now. Get my backup box. Now see how much longer this is? I have to trim it. This is more convenient. I haven't had this happen in so long. That's disappointing. But it happens. Okay, if this is crummy, then we just have to work with what we have. And you may choose to do that anyway. And you know, you can piece phyllo together. The only problem with that is the top of your Spanakopita or the top of your baklava is going to have cracks in it and it's not going to be smooth on top, which isn't as pretty, but it certainly works still. Okay, here we go. Roll that up and get it out of the way. It comes in with paper that you stretch out over your counter. Yes, this looks a little considerably better. Okay, so this is a big sheet, so I'm going to show you what I do with it. Here's my pan, a 13 by 9. I'm going to grab my 1 stick of melted butter. You might add a stick and a half or a stick and a fourth if you're worried about being a little heavy-handed with the butter and you don't want to run out. But take your pastry brush and just butter the bottom of the pan. And please remember to use unsalted butter, not salted butter. It will just ruin the taste of this. You don't want a salty, salty dish. Feta cheese is salty by itself, and we just don't need any other salt. There we go. So what I do when I'm using this size phyllo, now I told you you can cut it, which you can, or you can do this. Lay it in your pan. So I've got it laying in my pan this way, and then that's my first layer. I'm gonna drizzle some over the top. Spread it all around. You want to get butter between each and every layer. And then take the rest of it and just fold it over. So now I have 2 layers. There's my second layer. I'm going to butter it. So this is what I'm going to do with this large package of phyllo because it's long, and rather than cut it and trim it, I'm just going to lay one and then fold it over and butter again. So it's easy. That one there is just perfect for the pan size, but that was not impressive phyllo, so there. So this is our bottom crust, and we are going to do about 8 to 10 layers of this. Probably 8. I'll save the phyllo just because I'm not sure. As you can see, there's little tears in it. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You want your prettiest phyllo for the top. The bottom doesn't matter. But it's hanging over. Let me turn this so you can see it. It's hanging over the edge, and I'm going to butter it. And then fold it over. It doesn't matter if it tears. You can fold half of it over and then fold the other half and butter it. So now we have 4 layers, right? Because we used 2 sheets with 2 layers each. So I'm going to continue till I have 8 layers on the bottom. All right, I'm on my last layer. I now have 8 layers of phyllo. I actually used 4 full sheets, a half a sheet on each layer. And I've just got it in here. It's okay if it looks messy, you just want it to cover the bottom. It's the top part that you want to be a little neater with. Okay, so this is, excuse me, got butter between each layer. All right, so now we have our filling. And it's all mixed well, so I don't need to do any more mixing. And we're just going to take it and dump it in here carefully. And then we're going to spread it around so that the corners have equal amount of spinach and filling. You could get a spatula and scrape all that extra out if you'd like. I'm not going to take the time to do it, but I would if we weren't making a video. And then just move it around with the spoon so that your corners and the sides are as even as the middle. Okay, and so these little stems sometimes will poke out the sides. So if you want to do that now, poke them back in. There, so I've got a nice even layer of my spinach mixture. It smells so good. Now we need to cover this. And I'm not going to worry about the tears in this phyllo right now, but on the last couple of layers, I will take more care to not have a torn piece on top so that when it bakes up, we don't have curly phyllo, because that's what happens. If you have tears in it and you're piecing it together, then your phyllo, when it bakes, starts curling up everywhere, and you want a kind of a flat-ish top. So just same thing I did on the bottom. Going to fold this over, and don't worry if it doesn't go all the way to the other edge, because of which it doesn't, as you can see. I'll show you. Okay, it stopped short about an inch. We just want to make sure we're covering it over here. The next one will start from the other side, and we'll cover that up. So, but see, if we were to have this be the top of our spinach pie, this edge would start curling up when it bakes, and it just wouldn't be so pretty. So I'm hoping we can avoid that. Okay, so this time, if we lay this down on this side, try to get it as flat as you can, because we don't want those wrinkles like we had on the bottom. If you want pretty food. If you don't care about appearances, then you can do otherwise. Okay, so now we're going to fold it this way, and honest to goodness, when you buy phyllo that fits your pan, it's not quite this much work, but it's okay. So this time I'm a little short on this edge, but it's okay, because the next time I'm going to compensate with which side I lay my phyllo. So just alternate and you'll be fine. So I'm going to finish, and I like to put a lot of layers. I usually use whatever I have left in my box, but a dozen, 15 layers is not too much, because you just get more beautiful top on your finished product. And I've got a lot here, so. Okay, so this is going to be my last layer of phyllo, and I got lucky and the bottom pieces were nicer than the top. So we'll have a nice clean finish. But I want to show you what I'm doing on the last few pieces. I'm laying my phyllo over the top, carefully pressing it down, and then I'm trimming off this extra. I don't want to overlap it and have it fall short, because I want my top pieces to look as nice as they can. You don't have to do that. If you're not worried about appearances, it's still going to taste good, but I'm trimming off this extra and just laying it aside. It's going to dry out. I'm not going to be able to use that because I'm busy with this. Let me grab my butter. I also wanted to mention, you're going to have, you see this, these pieces along the edge that are higher. Just when you're buttering your phyllo, just push them down with the, so you don't have high edges. You can push them down like that, or you can leave them up tall and you'll just have a little bit of a crust going up the sides. It doesn't matter. But because there's more phyllo along the edge, your family will probably have a conversation about who gets those edge pieces, because everybody loves more phyllo. There. So, I'm finished. Didn't take very long. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. I want the butter to get hard. I could cut it right now, because you always cut Spanakopita before you bake it. If you try to cut it afterwards, just like baklava, it's just going to crumble and be a mess. So we want nice clean cuts. We're going to do that first. And I could cut it if I were in a hurry. I could cut it now and bake it. But I'm going to put it in the fridge and let the butter harden, and it will be really easy to cut through this, and I'll show you that. I just took my chilled Spanakopita out of the refrigerator. To hurry things along a little bit, I went ahead and popped it in the freezer for about 15 minutes. You don't want to leave it in there and freeze it, but you can chill it if you're in a hurry, doing that as well. But if you're not rushed, the refrigerator works fine. So now I have a really nice sharp knife, and I'm just going to cut this into portions. And I'm only cutting through the top crust. Do not put your knife all the way down to the bottom, or you're going to wind up with a soggy mess. So I'm just getting my knife in and then going through the top layer. You don't even have to get into the spinach at all. Okay, and I'm going to turn it. I'm going to do the same thing. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees, and we're going to leave it in the oven for about 30 minutes, but everybody's oven is different. You want it to be a nice golden brown, very crispy phyllo is what we're looking for. And all the layers want to be cooked through. Alrighty. So I've cut it. It's very pale, but once it bakes, it's going to be a golden brown. So I'm going to put it in my oven, and when it comes out, we'll get back together. The Spanakopita is out of the oven. It actually baked for about 40 minutes. I wanted a nice, deep, golden brown color. This is it. It looks gorgeous. It smells delicious. We've got a little bit of curling up of the phyllo. It will do that, but no matter what your Spanakopita looks like, I promise you it's going to taste delicious. Now I'm going to cut a piece out of this very soon, but I want to show you something. I always do this when I do a video with phyllo. I want to emphasize how important it is to cover your phyllo if you can't keep working with it, or you're just very slow. You don't want it to dry out. This phyllo's been sitting on the counter for about an hour, and it's just like paper now. So if that were to happen to you while you're making something like this, you'd have to go buy more, and it would be very frustrating. So again, just treat your phyllo with care and don't let it dry out. All right, so this is out of the oven, as I said, and you're going to take a very sharp knife and you're going to go through the layers, this time all the way down to the bottom, cutting through the bottom crust. And your topping on your individual squares might shift a little bit, so it might help to just keep your finger there, but don't push too hard or you'll crack it. So anyway, let's see if we can get a piece out so that you can see what this looks like inside. There we go. So we've got, I'm going to lift up the layers, but you can see these individual layers. And if you lift them up, your filling is inside, and it's delicious. I hope you try the recipe. I mean, if you like spinach, the other flavors just complement it so well. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.